Hello, everyone. How are you all today? Welcome to our webinar. I'm Paul, a content creator here at ZeroBounce, the man in the middle here. And today, there's a very uncomfortable truth that I must tell you. At this very moment, your data is decaying. But have no fear. The two people that I'm going to bring on shortly have a lot to say about that and what you can do. So just a few housekeeping things. This webinar is being recorded. So hello to all of you who are joining us live and also those of you who are watching the replay. And we are going to have plenty of time to answer your questions. We hope. Do not be shy. Ask any questions you might have there in the chat, and we are going to do our best to get to all of them. And in the meantime, let us know, where are you joining us from? We always manage to get the best audience for these webinars, and we have people who, it always blows me away how far everybody comes to watch the webinar. And if the audio is not working, you couldn't hear what I was saying anyways. So we're bringing together the two great Z's in tech. I'm talking about Zapier and ZeroBounce. But first, I'm going to introduce the Chief Operating Officer at ZeroBounce. Did you ever want to know a thought leader? Well, now you can. Brian Minnick is the coup here at ZeroBounce. He's also a very friendly and approachable guy. Feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn. Just hit that little QR code there to the right. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Lena Yu. She is the marketing ops at Zapier. She has experience in RevOps across media, tech, and agency settings. She draws on her background in email marketing, analytics, and graphic design to find creative, scalable solutions that make marketing and sales work better together. So far, we have Leah from Canada joining us, Josh from the Philippines. Good to have you all with us today. To tell you a little bit about Zapier, orchestrate AI workflows, agents, and apps. Zapier is the most connected AI orchestration platform, integrating with 7,000 tools across your lead management, sales pipeline, and marketing tech stack. Start fast with pre-built templates or customize complex logic with AI-powered Zaps with no code and no engineering wait times. And ZeroBounce, the premier email validation and deliverability platform, also an email finder for more than 400,000 customers. You recognize many of the brands there to your right: Netflix, LinkedIn, Vistaprint, so many others. And I know that many of you all are ZeroBounce customers, and we thank you for that. So today's agenda, we're going to be tackling email decay in 2025. We'll be covering key statistics, why invalid and fake data problems compound over time, how automation can combat it, the causes of invalid and fake data. You'll learn the ways it enters your system, how you can automate data cleaning in real time, and how Zapier works with CRMs, sales enablement platforms, and more. You're going to also learn how invalid data impacts your deliverability. We'll have a deep dive into bounce rates, inbox placement, real-world examples of deliverability issues and their impact, the best practices for maintaining clean data. And Lena's going to be covering a real-time Zapier demo with a step-by-step walkthrough, how to replicate the integration, tips on customizing the template, and of course, we're going to do our best to get to as many questions as possible. And with that, I'm going to hand things over to Brian and Lena.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you, Lena, for joining today. Very excited. This is a little chip on the belt for me as well, presenting with you, Lena, and Zapier, as I've been a Zapier user for, I don't know, I think you had less than 100 integrations when I first heard and started working on it. And so it's been quite some time. I'm dating myself and making some of that gray beard really shine here, but love the product and very excited to present with you today. Thank you all as well for everyone joining. And I see a lot of great people all over the country and the world here. So thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about the state of email list decay in 2025, some of the things that we're seeing. And what we do every single year is we start to analyze the data that comes into our platform, not on the specific email addresses. We're very big on the privacy, but we are going back on the statuses. So are they valid? Are they invalid data or whatever it might be? And in 2024, we went through over 10 billion email addresses, and the results are kind of astonishing. Few reasons. Number one, look at the chart off to the right. What I'm seeing and what we saw in 2021, 2022, we kind of started in 2021, assuming with everything going on with the economy, with COVID, all this stuff happening, jobs returning, things were moving. We said, let's start really tracking this. And what we started to see was as the years progress, we're actually seeing higher and higher churn of data, and data is decaying. And it's crazy if you think about it, but it's not at the same time. All of the jobs that are churning, things are happening, companies are opening, companies are closing, jobs are moving. And a lot of that B2B data, especially, is what's churning at a higher rate. And so we aggregated this at a very large scale to over 10 billion emails and found that only 59% of them were valid and deliverable emails. Let that soak in for a second on the data that might be sitting in your database. If you are having anywhere from 20 to 30% churn in your database, this is real. And what's happening is every time you're sending to it, there's impacts of not doing anything with those invalid contacts that are sitting there. We found over 24% of them were invalid or they're fake. The domains don't exist anymore, or they're non existent. Typos is another big one that we're catching a lot, especially, this is nothing new here, but mobile is, more and more prominent everywhere. And the amount of typos that are coming from mobile is significantly higher than from desktop. We're also seeing, and we're seeing around 17% of kind of just risky emails. So these are your catch-alls, your abuse. Abuse emails are the ones that people are known to mark you as spam if you send mail to them, and spam traps, which are set up by the different ISPs to catch bad senders who are not paying attention to the data decay and the bad type of emails that might be kind of lurking around. There's a QR code. If anyone wants to read the full report here, I do encourage you to do that and see what's going on and follow us as we continue to evolve this report year over year, continue to build it. But the results are showing a trend towards not good, and data is getting worse and data is compounding, and we have to do something about that. Here's what's going to happen if you just completely ignore data decay. Okay, especially if you're doing email. Email is for the most part, almost every business I've talked to, email address is the unique identifier for their customer. It is what their CRM leans on. It is what their Shopify store leans on. It doesn't matter. Email address is that kind of main point of centralization of around the whole record. And if that email address is bad, the whole record could be bad. We can't deliver mail to email addresses that do not exist, right? And so what's going to happen is you're going to get bounce rates, and the bounce rates are going to go up. This is getting a tighter and tighter kind of metric that all of the different mail providers are looking at. And it is to be said, you should not have a bounce rate higher than 2%. Okay. That means out of 100,000 emails that you send, 98,000 have to get to someone's mailbox. If not, you're going to start getting into some troubles with high bounce rates. The bigger issue, to be very honest with you, because a high bounce rate, you can recover from that one time. The problem is the effect that that bounce rate had. It's the reputation, your sender score. Your sending reputation is what's going to play a major role in the determination of, are you in the inbox or spam folder when you send a campaign? If your hygiene is bad on your data, your bounce rates go up. If your hygiene is bad, you are more likely to get hitting spam traps or people that'll mark you as spam. And ultimately, your deliverability is what's going to suffer. And so when your deliverability suffers, everything else suffers. And one of the biggest issues that I see is that people aren't actually thinking it's deliverability. They think it's something else. And then they go add more data that they haven't done any hygiene on. And then they're like, well, that kind of worked. Let's throw more at it. You're making the problem potentially bigger, and you have to kind of step back and look at the hygiene of the data. Ultimately, email revenue is going to suffer. And so if you have high bounce rates or bad sending score, all these things are going to affect your deliverability, which is going to impact your ROI. Lena?
So, one of the biggest challenges we see is that people know that their data decays, but they don't know what to do about it. You either don't have the time or you don't have the resources to fix it. So, that's where automation comes in. And so, instead of waiting to do like a quarterly audit or waiting to like a big campaign launch to clean your list, you can use something like Zapier to continuously verify emails in the background. So, if you're not familiar with Zapier, you can think of it as sort of like the connective tissue between all of your tools. As we mentioned earlier, we connect with over 7,000 apps. I think now it's actually maybe 8,000. And so between your CRM, your marketing platforms, maybe you use more than one email system, we can connect with all of those apps and create really flexible processes and fit that into your existing workflows. You don't need to create something new. You don't need to stand up a new tool. You don't need additional engineering resources. And so that means cleaner data, fewer bounces, and better engagement, all while doing this automatically. You don't need a human to do this manually. So we've got a demo queued up here for you. It is a use case on how to validate email addresses as part of your lead routing process. Let's walk through how to validate an email address with a form submission. So in this use case, I am using our demo form. This is the form that's on our website for when folks want to talk to sales. When a new contact submits that form, it will trigger this app. And first, I've got a fun little AI step. So we're lucky that we have a lot of information and use cases on our website. And so using the inputs from the form, so like job role, seniority, all of that stuff, we are going to ask our advanced AI assistant to help us find relevant content so that our AEs can prep for a meeting or a call. So it's going to compile anything that's relevant to either the problem that I stated in the form or things that could be useful to me based on my job title. And I'll put that in a tidy little summary for our AEs. Once that output is ready, we're going to send it back to HubSpot in a note, just like this. And then for our next step, we're going to validate the email address using ZeroBounce. And then finally, if the email address is invalid, where the status does not contain valid, we will add these contacts to a HubSpot list so that we can run our cleanup processes. Now, for your CRM and your process, if you wanted to run any property updates or any kind of like scrubbing, you could do that directly from the Zap. This is kind of like a personal preference on how you prefer to send this data back to HubSpot. You could have a step here just to update the contact directly, but that's really up to you. And it's very flexible to choose how you want to do that. Okay, so let's see this live in action. So this is a preview version of the contact sales form that I mentioned. So it's got my information here pre-filled. I'm going to update this with some helpful information for our AI bot. Let's say I'd like to learn more about lead management. And then we're going to click contact sales. Okay, so now we just wait for our Zap to run. Okay, so going into the Zap runs, we can see that we have a run happening right now. So the submission occurred, the AI step occurred, it added the AI output to HubSpot as a note, validated the email, and then I used my personal work email. And so we know in that case that email address is valid, so it did not get added to that list as that last step. Let me show you what this note looks like in HubSpot. It's kind of interesting. So this is my record in HubSpot, and you can see the note here. In the AI step, I did ask it to write it in a way that was easily readable for our AEs. So that's why it's got the bullets and the bolding here. All right. So that is how we typically validate email addresses using Zapier and ZeroBounce.
I just have to tell you that every time I see and my experience with Zapier of how much stuff you can do with it, it's so incredibly powerful. Thank you for the demonstration there.
We
Lena,
feel
do you
the
have
same
anything?
way.
You guys do a great job. Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on that demo side of it, or should we continue?
I think we're ready to roll.
All right. So, so as Lena was kind of showing, if there's invalid data, you might want to do something different, right? You might want to hold on here. There we go. So if something's happening, you can trigger the workflows. That's where I think Lena's really kind of shining here on what Zapier can really play a role on and how, you know, For example, there's riskier emails. Maybe you want to accept that through the form, but maybe you don't want to necessarily put them right into your marketing funnel. That might be another use case of something else where you should trigger a phone call instead. So there's just so many things you can do, like routing, decision making, that is just, to me, is so powerful. But let's talk about some of the reasons why some of that invalid and fake data is coming in. And again, one of the biggest things that we're seeing is typos. So on these forms, our API has caught over 10 million typos in 2024. I want you to take a second and think about what's the LTV of every contact that you have or every customer that you have. How many of those potentially got lost and slipped through the crack based on a typo? Think about it in a sense too of the experience of the customer. Just want you to know that no one has ever admitted that they typoed their name when they went to submit something on your form. So the actual thing that happens is they submit a typo, you accept it, you start running your automations, your automation sends to an email that doesn't exist, it bounces, your reputation's dinged, and your customer is sitting there going, "You guys never followed up with me." That whole thing could be avoided just because of a typo. So pay attention to typos, take a look at it, see if typos are coming up, by the way, they're happening probably a lot more often than you think. You just can't even read it when you're just scrolling through lists. So automate that. And the beauty is you can fix that with the user in real time. So that's another kind of thing that you can do. Bot signups. This one is becoming more and more of a problem every single day. These bots are hitting the forums, they're hitting websites, they are trying to harvest all of the data, they're trying to submit things through the forms. There's a lot of bad actors out there, unfortunately, and they're adding a bunch of junk to your list. And some of the examples that I've seen firsthand is you have companies doing great things. They're not doing anything that they shouldn't be doing. But then all of a sudden they wake up one day and they had 10,000 form submissions and it's all a bunch of random accounts. They have no idea what happened. And the entire thing is now commingled in their CRM or whatever system that data is flowing to. And now you have a hot mess, by the way, to deal with. And how do you know where it came from? Which one was good? Which one wasn't? Pay attention to that. You've got to kind of protect your form. Also, the privacy concerns. So more and more people are using what's called disposable emails or temporary emails. Call them burner emails if you want, but they basically self-destruct. And so they are designed, some of them are designed for quick self-destruction and some of them are designed to be controlled. Like Apple, for example, they do those hidden hidden mailboxes that they can create that forward. Their privacy concerns is a lot of them. And there's reasons why you might want to use them or allow them to come through. And there's reasons you might not. But an example here on Nina's example on the Zapier workflow, there could be a concept of, hey, if the email is considered disposable, which by the way, we catch, you might want to say, hey, I still want that to come into my CRM system, but this is a non-marketable contact. All the other information might still be good. Maybe the phone number was great, and that's how you kind of go after it. So just think about it. A lot of people are concerned with their privacy. They're sick of being emailed for absolutely everything, and then that email is shared everywhere. So a lot of people are using these, and they're spinning up all the time. So just be aware that stuff's out there. Another one is buying the list or using lead gen sites. So much of this, by the way, is out there. I don't want to name any names. We all know these companies that are out here putting data out into the world. There's good reasons for this, and there's bad things that come out of it as well. You have to pay attention. These guys are all focused on selling quantity. They want to get you as many records as possible and maximize the value of what they're delivering to you. It feels very good, but the quality of it is generally pretty bad. I'm the chief operating officer at ZeroBounce. I've been here for 7 years. I am still getting emails because they route to me of people that have not worked for the company for over 6 years, and they're sending a first-time cold email. And it just blows my mind. Like, how do you still have this? Who's making you believe that these people still exist? There's so many bad contacts living on those lists. And please, for whatever reason, if you get an email from these Outlook, Gmail accounts selling you all the Klaviyo users and whatever it is sounds great to your business, they're not. They're problems, and they're full of really bad data sets in there. So be careful of that one as well. Tell me how you guys are handling it.
Yeah. Okay. So obviously we use Zapier in-house. We are big Zapier fans. So the problem with bad data is that it doesn't just sit there in your system quietly. It triggers workflows. It skews reports, as we've talked about. It's going to damage your sender score. And so one thing that I want to highlight specifically with Zapier that I think might resonate with folks, your email data probably doesn't just live in one place. If you've got platform for e-commerce, if you've got a data warehouse, you might be storing this data in multiple places. And so a platform like Zapier is really helpful because once it's clean, Zapier can help send the data across multiple systems. I see a few folks in the chat asking, can Zapier integrate with other platforms? Yes, absolutely. So we integrate with over 8,000 apps. And so that's a multitude of CRMs, automation platforms, email systems across the board. And so once someone is triggered as invalid one place, you can send that data to multiple places. And to me, the real benefit here is sort of the flexibility. As an example, you might want have one sign up source that is more prickly than others, might be getting, spam bots to one source over another. So with Zapier, you could build a custom workflow just for that one source without having to edit the process for the way that you validate emails across the board. And the benefit is that you don't need code, you don't need an engineer to do this, you can do this all on your own.
Should I go to the next one?
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So the next kind of big topic is how does that bad data impact your deliverability? And I talked a little bit about it, but I'm going to go deeper into it. And one of the things is obviously your bounce rates are going to jump up. And so that is a massive trigger, by the way, for the ESPs to do a few different things. So this is affected to help paint the picture. There's two sides of this equation. There's the sending, right? So this could be your, I don't want to name too many names here, MailChimps or whatever it is, right? That send mail out. There's lots of those companies. That's not a bias preference towards that. There's also the receiving. That's the Gmail, that's the Outlook, that's the those of the world. And there's problems that happen on both sides when bounce rates are there or spam complaints are there. If you're sending too many emails out and you're getting bounces, the ESPs will kick you off. Or, and by the way, this is almost as bad, maybe worse, is they will actually move you into lower quality infrastructure, which has less care and maintenance around the reputation, the deliverability, and they're just going to kind of take your money and keep sending mail out on your behalf, but they don't really care if it goes to inbox or spam because they don't think you're following best practices. So you're almost being you're almost getting a favor if you get kicked off because it should be that flag that pops up for you and says, hey, I have problems with my data, because that's really what this means. When your bounce rates are too high, you have problems with your data. And the mail providers are going to start losing trust in you because if you're following best practices, right, which is cleaning, making sure the data is clean, you're sending content to people that want to read and view this content, they're opting in, bounce rates shouldn't be too much of a problem. Where that's shifting is the economy, and where that's shifting is just the business world and what's going on with emails now. And so you have to just kind of pay attention to it. The ESPs are definitely enforcing these limits, okay? And they're also enforcing spam complaints. So if you have too many spam complaints, not only is the ESP going to get upset at you, then that's when the problems are starting to happen on Gmail, G Suite, Outlook, where your mail is just like, nobody wants this. Think of them as signals. They're holding up a flag, going, "No one wants this mail. Fine, send it to the spam folder." So just be a parent, be aware of these different types of scenarios that are happening. It's coming from multiple angles. So you as a sender, and then how you're viewed when your mail hits those providers. They're looking at everything about you. And by the way, they don't have like judgment. They don't know, oh, there's nobody exempt. I'm going to tell you this. We work with some of the biggest brands in the world. You saw those logos. They have the same problems that you guys do because no one is exempt. So just be aware. It's pretty powerful stuff. And the reason that some of them might not be opening the emails is this is another one that drives me nuts. I hope 2026 is the year that we finally remove the metric of delivered. It means almost nothing. I don't understand the metric, never have on the ESP side. Deliver doesn't mean to the inbox. Sure, you can deliver 100,000 pieces of mail to the spam folder and say it was a good job. It's a terrible job. It's not a good metric. Inbox is where you're going to make your money. Inbox is where your messages are seen. That's where your ROI is going to be. If opens and clicks are dropping, it could be in the spam folder. But privacy is really starting to throw a lot of shade towards visibility into this. And so you're going to be hit with this mystery. If ROI is not there, there's other problems. It's either hygiene, content, how you're trying to convert, whatever it might be. So just be aware. On the email statistics side, these are some stats that are very interesting to me. 76% of people actually will check their spam folder, but to add more color to that, that doesn't mean they're clicking every one of the spam folders. That means they're just going to visit the spam box. And most people are saying to us that they're only doing that because someone like called them and said, "Hey, you didn't get my email. Can you check the spam folder?" So spam is not a place where people are going to read your message. And if it's anything like mine, it's filled every single day with cold pitches and all this other stuff. 25% of people may only check that a few times a year. And that's, again, generally based on a prompt. And if you're anything like a lot of people I know, they're never checking it at all. If it's there, it shouldn't be there. I probably don't need to know about it. And if it's real, they'll find me another way. So, the kind of the amount of stuff going into the spam folder is really shocking, to be very honest. Failing campaign metrics, that's what's going to give you a bunch of deliverability metrics or problem. It should start to highlight that. When your campaigns fail, step back and ask yourself why. If it failed just one time, maybe that's the content. If it's failing consistently, it's probably not your content. It's probably something else. So this stuff is out there. I want to talk about a real world case study that we did with Belkins. When they came to us, they said they have massive problems. They had a huge bounce rate, 19.09%, which, by the way, is an insanely high number. That's not normal. I want to even also say that. So if you're like, well, I only have a 4% bounce rate, that's nothing. That's not normal either, by the way. 19% is extreme. They came to us and they had a lot of invalid emails, they had a lot of spam traps, and they had no engagement in their campaigns. Everything was in the spam folder and their sending reputation was declined. Everything on the campaigns looked like it was basically just low quality. Nothing was happened. They came to us, we cleaned up we validated their entire database, and the result was dramatically improved and quickly. And I encourage a lot of people, if you're unsure, you're not sure how this might, go read our reviews. These are real customers telling you our deliverability has never been better. Our campaign performance has never been better. This is a really big thing to make sure you're doing. You got to clean up the data. So after they went through it, we talked with Margot, who's the CMO over at Belkins, and they're basically saying, their emails weren't reaching their customers. It was led to a lot of missed opportunities, decreased customer satisfaction. Because again, they are perceiving you when your mail isn't being delivered to them. Why didn't they send me the follow-up? I asked for this information. I didn't get it. Think of the customer experience. It's a lot more than just your campaign ROI. It's also how the receivers are looking at you. So once we helped them kind of get rid of the spam traps, get out of the spam folder, that's when things started to really change for them. We have this as a published case study. You're welcome to check it out. After validating and cleaning up their data, the bounce rate dropped dramatically and campaign performance improved dramatically. So it's very powerful. Utilize tools like Zapier to build it into your workflow, especially if you're anything like I've seen, because I've built these workflows. That one entry point might send the data to 6 different places. Imagine that if you could have cleaned up the data before it went to all those places. Who's managing all that data? Who's reviewing it? These are the questions that you should be asking. And if the answer is no one, like time out, pause. It's time. So you have to clean up the data.
So I just want to highlight another use case. This is Shopify and ZeroBounce. So Shopify had a similar issue where they didn't want customers that were invalid to get into their database at all. And so a tool like Zapier lets you automatically check before it enters your system. And we're just using Shopify as an example here, but it really can start from anything, whether it's a form, a spreadsheet, a platform. So you can create a Zap or an agent with Zapier that connects to your lead source. In this case, it's Shopify, to ZeroBounce for real-time validation. And then if the email does get flagged as invalid, it gets filtered out before it even gets added to your system, never enters your database. And so this example is not a one-time or even a continuous cleanup effort. It's a scalable system that protects your sender reputation, and it's keeping your data all the time. And so this is just one example of maybe the customer is purchasing something, maybe they're creating an account, but this use case would work across the board for any time people are giving you email addresses.
Yeah. So how do we keep the data clean? I think that's probably, I hope that's the question on everyone's mind. How do we do this? What's the best practices and what should we do? The one thing is you need to be checking your database regularly. This might sound like overkill, but it's not. I'm telling you, as a B2B company that we are, even at ZeroBounce, we are seeing high 20% churn of data. Okay. And by the way, this is what we do. Okay. So we are checking everything on the signups. We're checking everything as it moves through. We're checking anything before the reps go out and send their, their emails to the signups. All of that stuff needs to happen. Check it regularly. If you are a B2B customer, you sell to businesses, you should be checking that data every quarter. Imagine this, 28%, divide that by the year. What are we talking here? 7%, 8%? You're going to have peaks and valleys in there. You could have 10, 11% maybe during holiday season if that's your big time to start ramping up a lot of campaigns. Things can be changing, and you want to make sure before you go into those moments that the data is clean to avoid all of those bounces. So make sure you're checking the data. If it's consumer data, and by that I mean free email accounts, AOLs, Gmails, Hotmails, Yahoos, those generally don't churn as fast, but they are churning and they're also being disabled. And so people are abandoning those accounts really quick. They're not paying for them. They really don't care. Sometimes they're kind of at times being treated like burner accounts. They just set them up and kind of never check them. So check the data. Always check the data before you upload, especially if you have a really, really important send. I know how much work goes into these email campaigns. We see it. I've been part of it. I've been part of the team. Thankfully, we have a bigger team and I'm not part of that anymore. But I have definitely seen the amount of effort that's going into it. And these guys work their tail off to get it out the door. Check it before you hit send because it's really a point where you can catch everything right before. A lot of the integrations will let you kind of also schedule cleanings if that's something that you might need. So we do a lot of integrations as well. Zapier is a way to check the data as it's moving, which I highly, highly recommend. But also then once it's in that system, you can set up different ways to also continuously check it. And you can do that through Zapier as well. So there are ways to do it. Kind of consider it like cleaning your clothes, right? Like we don't buy a shirt and just keep wearing that shirt, throw it in the laundry bin and keep sending to it, keep sending to it. You have to clean this stuff and your data is no different. Protect the forms. This is another thing that was showing on the demo. There's lots of ways to do it. You can use, and automation here is key, by the way, complete key. If you don't have a developer, that is where a tool like Zapier is so incredibly powerful. And even if you have a developer, like I have developers, I have a Zapier account and I've built some crazy workflows because I feel like I'm a pro, but I'd probably get schooled by you, Lena, but I feel like a pro. And so whether you have a developer or not, the answer is it can still be done. And I think that is where such a powerful tool like Zapier comes in. What I have here that is borderline pretty blurry and you can't see is a screenshot of a form that is a typo is going in there. I know you can't see it, or maybe you can, but it says at gnail.com with a typo. We are catching that on the API. And if that you see that red error message above the form, that can be displayed back to the user. So we can, if you have a developer, you can take it next step further and do the validation in real time and prompt the user to fix the email. Again, the power of that. What if they typoed it? What if they just gave you a bad email? I'm also seeing if you're a type of business that is offering coupons or whatever, your storefront, whatever it might be, great. If you offer content as a result of receiving the email, you know just as well as me, bad data is flowing through that form. And the reason is because they don't really know if they trust you yet. That's number one. They don't know if they necessarily want all your emails. But what's that little hidden gem you put back here? Hold on. Smash the keyboard at smashthekeyboard.com. Boom. Now I have what I need. That can just be protected. That's the concept here, right? You're not going to fully avoid that. You can't avoid user behavior, but you can react to it. And that's kind of one of the points of protecting your forms. Integrations with CRMs automatically clean the data as it's going through there. And if you're also maybe not very developer friendly or don't have all of the tools, we even offer forms that have this built into it. So you just plug it onto your website and do it that way. This is so important, but auditing the data acquisition process. And this is not generally a fun topic unless you're in the ops side and data is your world. But if it's not your world, that's okay. But you have to kind of put a check on this, especially, by the way, if you have salespeople. I'm sorry, I hate to keep throwing them under the bus, but this is where I see so many problems coming from is sales teams. So you have marketing doing something, they're following best practices, they've read all the books, they're checking all the boxes that they need, but then you have a team coming in rogue and they're grabbing data from everywhere, they're grabbing all these different sources, blending it into the same kind of ecosystem, and now you have a problem on your hands. So make sure you're checking the data acquisition process, make sure validation is taking place at some point in that acquisition process, and make sure that you're getting things from legitimate companies, legitimate sites. There are good reasons, by the way, to grab some of this data, intent data. They're on your website. There's good stuff out there. I'm not arguing that, but don't trust every bit of it. It's a little bit shaky as to how good it could be. And how many times did they sell it? It's another question you should always be thinking about. So think about that and bridge the gap. If you take anything away from me today and you're on the marketing side or sales side, and assuming you're on one, please communicate with the other side of the room, which is sales and marketing need to communicate on data acquisition, where it's coming from. Lastly, I'm going to touch on it quick. The authentication. So the ability to authenticate your emails before they go out. This is where it's going to get a little more technical. This is the SPF, the DKIM and DMARC. These things are incredibly important. They're being enforced by Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft. This is only going to get tighter. This is only going to continue to evolve, by the way. And if anyone is technical here and listening, if you just have the policy that says P equals none, sure, I applaud you for doing the absolute bare minimum, but that doesn't do anything as far as give you visibility onto your authentication or see if any other problems are lying out there, such as people are trying to send from your domain, which if you're a big enough brand, by the way, this is something they're lurking on. And so if this is not, set up and properly there, people could be trying to send from your domain. And in some cases can actually get that mail out if you haven't protected it. So authentication helps with that. And I think this one's yours,
Yes. So, one thing to consider as we think about all of this is how to make your validation process flexible. So, your lead sources might change, your marketing strategy might change, your tech stack might change. You don't want to be locked into a rigid process that requires a lot of overhead to update. And using Zapier is just one way to do that. So, there's two things I would encourage folks to consider. One is your native tools logic robust. So I see a lot of folks asking in the chat about can these systems connect with these other systems? And so there is native integrations. You could also use Zapier, but I would consider how robust the integration natively is, because if it's challenging or really limited in what it can do, you're not going to get what you need out of it. And the second thing I would encourage folks to consider is how much dev support do you need to fix these data issues? If you need a lot of resourcing, a lot of engineering, a lot of data warehouse engineers, that's a big project to do if you need to do a big cleanup of your database. So if those are two barriers for your team, you're going to want to consider a different process. Maybe a tool like Zapier is going to be the right fit. And the other thing, I would just make sure, we've hammered home on this point a lot, but just to reiterate, you're going to want something that can run in the background without human intervention. So obviously the benefit of a tool like Zapier is having built-in AI tools. It can minimize manual work, or it can summarize any of the data issues. And so we've got one more demo for you here today. We're going to walk through how you can use a Zapier agent to create a validation process and sort of the magic of using AI for something that would normally be a manual or tedious task. And personally, I'm really excited to show you all this because it is my first time demoing agents publicly. And I think we are ready to roll it. Hey everyone, let's walk through how to validate email addresses using a Zapier agent. So in my example, I have my agent scheduled to run on the first of every month. And I gave it the instructions to retrieve contacts from our CRM that were created in the last month. It's going to extract the email addresses, send to ZeroBounce to validate. And then if any are invalid, it will send a signal back to HubSpot, update a property so that we know that they're invalid. And then it's going to compile a Slack summary for us. It will include the number of email addresses it validated, the number of which were invalid, but then also the AI will spit out summary of any reoccurring patterns in the spam domains, just in case we need to share this with any relevant teams. And then finally, it's going to post the message to Slack. So if you've not used a Zapier agent before, the benefit of an agent versus a Zap is that the agent is a lot more flexible. Think about it as AI helper. And so if you're setting up a Zap with all of these steps, you have to put these steps into the Zap yourself, configure them, make sure they're sending data to the next step correctly. An AI agent can do all of that for you. I've only written the instructions. It will consider the best way to accomplish each of these steps. It focuses more on the goals, whereas with the Zap, you have to focus more on the task. So I've given it all the instructions here. Let's run it and see how it works. And just for this example, instead of running the list for everyone that was created in the last month, I'm going to give it a specific prompt. And we're going to say, just for today, modify the workflow so that we are just looking at these specific email addresses. These are some dummy email addresses that are in our CRM. This way, I don't have to run and revalidate all of the contacts that we previously created last month, which is a lot of contacts. So we're just going to hit enter. And then you can see how the agent is thinking about running these steps live here on the right side. And as you're testing it, it will give you feedback. It might ask you to approve or review some things. When this runs for real, you won't need to do that. It runs independently. There's nothing you have to click or push or anything. And so we're just going to go ahead and approve it. And you can see it's going through the email addresses and just validating through ZeroBounce right now. And now it is prepping to send information back to HubSpot for any of the invalid emails. Okay, so it is now getting ready to prep the Slack message that I've asked for with the summary. And so here's the summary, and we're going to go ahead and prove it so it posts to Slack. Okay, and it has officially finished running. Let me pull up the Slack message so you can see what this looks like. And it does match, what it ran over here on the right side. And you'll notice that I did not tell my agent how to do any of the Slack formatting. The AI just figured it out itself on what made sense to format, what to bold, all that type of stuff. And it even knew to include this detail. So to contact me if there was any additional information that people had, because I am the one that created the agent. So it knew to do that. And so that is how you would set this up through an agent. And like I said, it's very customizable. So if you are wanting to pull in other systems, maybe you use multiple email platforms, or even if you wanted to post the summary, not just in Slack, but in a documentation platform that you use or project management platform you use, you can post it there as well. And all you have to do is add the steps here if you want to be really specific. Let's say there is a specific format on how you want this Slack message to look. You can give your agent that instruction. But if you don't, the AI is smart enough to figure out how to do this all for you. All right. And that is how you set up an email validation workflow through Zapier agents. I hope you guys found that cool because I thought it was really cool that we could do this through an agent now.
Love it.
Awesome. And that is all I had on the demos today.
All right, so that takes us to the Q&A. Let's see and folks, please don't be shy. If you have any questions, do not hesitate.
While you're waiting for the questions, I was the one that pushed heavily to build the ZeroBounce integration into Zapier. I was like, we need this. And we've added all of our tools in there. We have a lot of usage on it as well. And we've always heard great feedback. So it's just such an honor to kind of coordinate and present with you today. I just want you to be aware.
Yeah, we're really excited to be here as well. This is a fun topic, I think, for anyone that's sort of like an email nerd like me.
So this comes from Heather. If you know and see those typos in your database, should you fix it and then send an email? How do you handle fixes like that? This person has likely never heard from you since the email address was wrong. Would it be appropriate to notify them in some way before looping them into a regular marketing cadence? What do you all think?
I think this is a great question and something that if you're proactive, by the way, you're catching this in real time. So that's one thing to think about in the future. However, damage is done, typo went through, you caught it. If you caught it through validation, we're going to suggest the typo fix, by the way. So if it is a typo, we're going to put back into the response the typo fix. So you can use that as a replacement and then go ahead and try to contact them that way. Could put up a message if I could get clever with it, like a whoopsie email, right? I think you typoed your email. We just wanted to make sure. That's definitely one way to do it, but I think it's totally appropriate. I mean, if they typoed it in a sense where and we come back with confidence that we have the right email, I mean, yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. You're probably doing both sides a favor. So yeah, I would definitely do it. But again, I would really recommend going back and kind of how do I catch that before they submit and leave the page. That would be definitely one way to do it. I would
Yeah.
definitely do it.
I agree with that. I think also it depends on like what form they're filling out. So if you miss the validation at the point of form, you're kind of stuck in this position of like, okay, well, what do we do with this email? So in the first demo that I gave as an example, it was a contact sales form. It's more than appropriate for the sales rep to then DM them maybe like on LinkedIn or something else and say like, hey, I just want to confirm that this was you. I want to make sure we didn't like ghost you. I think that is something like that is totally fine.
So this one comes from Leah. She says, why a Zapier agent versus the first workflow?
This is such a great question. So, Zapier Workflows has been around for over 10 years now, but agents is relatively new. And so, I think it's important to think about agents as sort of focused on the goal. So, I just gave it a list of instructions. It figured out how to complete each one of those bullets on its own. If I were to go to set up the same type of process in a workflow in a Zap, I would have to manually set up each step and say like, "Hey, pull the data from here." Then in the next step, take the data and extract it and format it in this way. An agent is powered based off of AI. It knows how to do those things. And with most Zaps, there's more than one way to do something, right? An agent will figure out what is the best way, what is the most efficient based on the instructions that you give it. With the Zap, a human still has to manually set up those tasks. Once it's up and running, obviously it's automated, but the initial setup, a person has to make all those decisions. And so an agent is really powerful for things like summaries. Like, so in my demo example, I don't want a person to go through our list of invalid emails and spot the patterns. I just want AI to do that for us.
This comes from David. He asks, can we hire someone from Zapier to set this up for us?
Yeah, you could. So you could go through the contact sales form on Zapier's website. However, we do also work with a lot of third-party agencies to help with that setup. If you need something really specific that is not something we have experience with in-house, we have a whole suite of partners that we work with that can help you get up and running.
All right. Thank you all for your questions. This comes from Francis. Does your agent detect contact typos that are automatically integrated into workflows? For example, Google Calendar or contact list?
Oh, this is a great question.
Very good.
Yeah, you could. So my example was set up specifically for like a monthly run, but you could set up the trigger to be looking at like, for example, anytime a new calendar event is added to your calendar, take a look at all of the email addresses associated with that calendar event. And then the validation is the same way you validate through zero bounce, and then whatever your process is for flagging that in your database.
This one comes from Andrea. Obviously, live validation is the best path forward, but any recommendations on validating old data in the database and how often you think that should happen?
Yeah, definitely. So the way to do that's actually very simple. Either A, we have a native integration built into a lot of the major tools, but not 8,000. Sorry, we don't have 8,000. Zapier can help you with that. But we do have with a lot of the major tools. If you don't have access or we don't support one of those tools, it can always come down into like a CSV or Excel file, a Google Drive file, whatever it might be, and we can run through the entire database and give it back. If it's through one of the integrations that we have as well that natively work, we actually push the data back as well. So there's no actual handling of any data required by any of the users. But if you do have just an Excel file, CSV, whatever it might be, you can do it that way. And we'll validate the data and you can turn it back around. Just for context, too, if it's helpful, about 100,000 emails right now, we're averaging about 31 minutes to turn that around. Okay. So we're not talking about weeks. We're not talking about days. We're talking about minutes. We're talking about your lunch break. You can go ahead and clean up all the data and get it back.
Another question here. What type of feedback loop or governance do you have through Zapier Agent to ensure it doesn't error? Will you get error email alerts like you do with Zaps?
Yeah, this is a great question. So I think it depends on the type of agent. So in my use case, since we're validating through ZeroBounce, there's not really a lot in this particular use case. There's not really a lot of error management that I had to do. You absolutely can put in steps to make sure you're being alerted because an agent runs independently, the type of errors that you're going to get is just a little bit different than what you would get with the Zap. Zap's error when it's missing a piece of data that is dependent to run the rest of the Zap. Your AI agent is smart enough to figure out what to do with that. So you can give it instructions for like if there's an error, alert me via Slack, or if there's an error, send me, whatever email. Wherever you want that notification, you can ask your agent to do that for you.
All right. From Beverly, can a Zapier AI agent use an existing Zap workflow to accomplish a subsequent action?
Oh, absolutely. So an agent can be completely independent. So the use case that I gave, it's totally contained within that one agent, that one behavior. It doesn't do anything else. But you can also trigger an agent through a Zapier workflow at any point in your Zap.
All right. So John asks, all of this is new to us. I take it we should start out with database validation with Zero Bounce first and then set up a hygiene plan with a Zapier agent. What do you think there?
Do you want to take it? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts first, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I do think if you have generally speaking, if the data is already in a place, it might be quicker or faster. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not faster, but it might be quicker to get the whole database scrubbed and then put in all the missing elements on the agent side to make sure it's there, or use the agent to do the whole scrubbing process. That's obviously an option as well. I think the data is important. And then I see Zapier as the automation tool. I've always seen Zapier as like, if you want to put a cape on as an operations person, like you need Zapier, right? This is how I've always seen it. And so I think that's an important step and it needs to happen. I think they go hand in hand. You could do one first, one second. I don't know if it necessarily matters, but the important part is you actually want to do something, by the way. So, good job on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know that I have like a specific POV on what order you should do these things. Like just doing it is important. If you're saying you're like net new to validating emails, you've never done this before, this is like all this terminology is new to you. Yeah, you maybe don't want to add Zapier in the mix right away. It's a new tool for your tech stack. Maybe focus on just the email validation side first. That's fine. Or if you are familiar with Zapier, maybe you're more comfortable doing this through Zapier just to get the hang of it before you figure out what the bigger strategy. I don't think there's a wrong answer here.
All right. So this one comes from Leah. What's the most unique way you've seen a customer use Zero Bounce? Well, Leah, I can tell you one thing that I have been able to do with it, and that is find somebody that I was not able to find using any of the other email finders. And I was able to use the Zero Bounce email finder, but maybe you all also have something that you could say was a unique thing.
So this is a very interesting and incredibly hard question to answer, by the way. So thank you. The why it's so hard is because I thought when we started Zero Bounce that this was for email marketers only. Then I realized that's not even close to scratching the surface. We're talking about tech people that want to protect the assets of, free Netflix accounts being created. So it's now a security side, it's a fraud prevention side where the email address is very important. So, for example, if you give away free things, this is something I saw. What I find most unique, besides the validation side of like, yeah, this is no longer a marketable contact, the ability to curb problems because the email address is again that unique identifier and generally the starting point of everything about that customer or contact, however you're kind of thinking about it. I have seen people curb a lot of their problems, abuse, and essentially all the dirt and mud that it stirs up as a result of that. That's probably some of the most interesting cases that I've seen. But some of the biggest success stories, which I probably can answer in a better way, typos. Strava is a very big customer of ours. Their mobile app, fitness, they've had lots of problems, typos. We catch a bunch of those for them. And then really the set it and forget it concept, whether you're using Zapier or using native integrations, where everything's just happening in the background, like the ability to no longer transfer files all the time and all of that, that's where I would say a lot of the success is coming from.
Yeah, I don't think I have a better answer than that. Unique way you've seen a customer use zero bounds. I mean, once you kind of set it and forget it, that's kind of like where the magic happens. But yeah, I think that was a great answer, Brian.
Throw in a bonus and just say the email warm-up tool is quite exceptional. All right.
It's another good one.
So if there's any more questions, just let us know, but I'll, in the meantime, hand things off.
Sure. So just to wrap up, thank you everyone for joining. I know we're coming up on time as well. For anybody, I do see a bunch of questions around zero bounce and how do I do things. We offer a lot of free services, by the way. Our integration to Zapier is free as far as that goes. We do not charge because you want to use Zapier or any of the integrations. So in that sense, it's free. But yes, you do need basically accounts on both sides of that equation. We offer a freemium service that is great for small businesses. There's nothing watered down. There's nothing watermarked. And so the goal is we consider ourselves the data cleaner uppers of the world. And that's what we want to do. So whether you're small or big, we can help you. So feel free. This is on the front of the website. You can even just test it. Or if you have a list, you can upload it to the front of our website and we'll give you a snapshot as to how potentially risky that is, what type of stuff might be lurking on that list, and just some more kind of, bullet points on things that we're doing. Placement tests on inbox. So you send your campaigns to us first. We can tell you if it went to the inbox or the spam folder. We have these email finders, which is what Paul was mentioning about. If you are looking for someone or maybe looking for a replacement contact, you have the name, but you don't necessarily have the email. We can help find that for you. Blacklist monitoring for your sending reputation and email warm up as well. So if you have a lot of problems in your spam folder, there's solutions there as well. And that's generally what's called an email warm up service, which we provide as well. Lastly, please check out the kind of native integrate, I don't know, native predefined integrations that we have listed here between ZeroBounce and Zapier. It's really endless possibilities. Just consider us a little punch into the data set as you're moving it around. And so again, just encourage everybody to check that out and get creative with it.
Absolutely. Just to plug, Zapier also has a freemium version. So if you've never used it before and you're trying to figure out how to sync it best with zero bounds, make your free account and like play around with it.
All right. Anything we maybe left out? I think we've covered lots of information, a lot of it very interesting and very well presented, both of you.
Thank you. Nothing from me. Thank you, Lena, for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, as well, for attending the session and watching the recording.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you, Lena. Thank you, Brian. And thank you all for joining us today. And we hope to see you on the next webinar. You all have a great day.